Good evening. My name is John Ritchie, and I'm a junior biology major from Westfield, Indiana, and it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the founder, chairman, and chief legal counsel of Children's Health Defense, founder of Waterkeeper Alliance, and of counsel at Morgan & Morgan, a nationwide personal injury practice. He earned a BA from Harvard University, a JD from the University of Virginia School of Law, and an LLM from the Pace University School of Law. He also studied at the London School of Economics. A recipient of numerous awards, including the Stroud Award for Freshwater Excellence and the Theodore Gordon Fly Fishers Conservation Award, Mr. Kennedy has practiced law for nearly 4 decades, working on environmental initiatives and defending victims of government and corporate corruption and abuse. He is the author of numerous books, including American Values, Lessons that I Learned from My Family, The Real Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy and Public Health, and forthcoming, The Wuhan Cover-Up, How U.S. Officials Conspired with the Chinese Military to Hide the Origins of COVID-19. Please join me in welcoming Robert F. Kennedy, Jr.
Realize, okay, these guys either don't know what they're doing or they're lying about it deliberately. And then I realized these agencies were completely captured, but agency capture on steroids. FDA gets more than 50% of its budget from the pharmaceutical companies. CDC has a $12 billion budget, and $5 billion of that, so almost half, goes to buying vaccines from these companies and then distribute them. So if you work at CDC, you do not get promotions by finding problems with vaccines. You get promoted by increasing uptake. And then NIH is just an incubator for pharmaceutical products. So it develops the vaccines, hands them over to the industry, hands them over to the universities, which then get NIH money, $200, $300 million to do phase 2 and phase 1 and phase 2 trials. Then if those are successful, which they always are because they make them successful, they then call in the pharmaceutical company to do a phase 3, and then they all divide up the royalty, the patent margin rights, and then they all go, then Tony Fauci, who's the head of NIH, walks it through the regulatory process at FDA and CDC, where he's picked the members of the panels who are all taking money from him. And they know their product is next in line, and their job is to rubber stamp this product and recommend it to children. So I saw this process and how it worked. And it's beyond, it was regulatory capture on steroids. It was like, and then NIH gets the money. I got deplatformed for saying NIH owns half this the Moderna vaccine. They said that's vaccine misinformation. Well, guess what? On Thursday this week, Moderna made a $400 million payment to NIH for its share of the royalties to date. So, all of my conspiracy theories have about a 3-month shelf life before they become reality. And then what I realized, I do this very quickly, I saw what had happened in the vaccine program. And when I was a kid, I got 3 vaccines, and I was compliant. But my kids, I have 7 kids, they got 72 vaccines, and they're all mandated. In California, you can't get out of it. And how did that happen? It happened because Ronald Reagan signed the Vaccine Act. What happened is in 1979, they started using a DTP vaccine, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, which is now illegal in Europe and the United States. Bill Gates gives it to 161 million African kids a year. But it was killing or doing permanent brain damage to 1 in every 300 kids, according to an NIH commission study at UCLA. So this was devastating. So we got rid of it, and we switched it with another attenuated version of the vaccine that is less dangerous and less effective. But Wyeth, which made it, which is now called Pfizer, went to Reagan and said, we're paying $20 in downstream liability for every dollar that we make in profits. and we're going to get out of the vaccine business altogether unless you give us full immunity from liability. And Reagan said, why don't you make the vaccine safe? And they said, because vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. And that phrase is in the preamble of the statute. So when people tell you it's safe and effective, the statute that they're relying on says they're unavoidably unsafe. And the Brucewitz versus Wyeth case, which is the Supreme Court case that upheld that statute, has the same phrase in it. So as soon as he did that, now they have this liability shield. So no matter how negligent they are, no matter how reckless they are, no matter how grievous your injury, no matter how toxic and unnecessary the product, no matter how unnecessary and ineffective the vaccine, you cannot sue them. They, and of course, these are the companies that are not good companies. These are the same companies that gave us the opioid epidemic that now kills more, 68,000 kids in this country every year, more than the Vietnam War did in 20 years. And they knew it. And if you look at that Netflix documentary, Dope Sick, it shows exactly how they did it, because the FDA was totally corrupted by this industry and did whatever they said. And so so this is the industry. What happens when you go to that industry and you say, now, no matter what you do, by the way, the 4 companies that make all of our vaccines have paid $35 billion in criminal penalties in the last 10 years. These are criminal enterprises. Criminality, there are serial felons, every one of them. So why do you think, if you remove any chance they'll ever get caught, that they're suddenly going to find Jesus and say, yeah, because in my political party, everybody knows, the Democrats, everybody knows the pharmaceutical companies are just the worst, most corrupt company that there are. But when it comes to vaccines, they're not corrupt. And it's this weird cognitive dissonance. So then what happened is you had these companies that now are absolved from the biggest cost of every medicine, which is downstream liability. Then they're absolved from something else. Vaccines are the only medical product that never has to do pre-licensing safety studies. So not one, and this is an artifact of CDC's legacy as the public health service, which is part of the uniformed military services. And the public health service launched the vaccine program as a national security defense against biological attacks on our country. So they wanted to make sure that if the Russians attacked us with anthrax or some other biological agent, we could quickly formulate a vaccine and then deploy it to 200 million Americans with no regulatory impediments. Because they said, if we call it a medicine, we're going to have to test it for safety. That takes 5 years, because a lot of the injuries from medical products have long diagnostic horizons or long incubation periods. You don't see them for 5 years. And you could be saving 10,000 lives from diphtheria and killing 100,000 people from cancer 5 years later. You want to find out if that's true. But they said, we don't have time to do that. So we're going to call them biologics, and we will exempt biologics from any safety testing. So for many years, I was saying not one of the 72 vaccines mandated for children has ever been safety tested in pre-licensing placebo-controlled trials, not one. Tony Fauci was saying he's lying. In 2016, President Trump appointed me to run a vaccine safety commission. And he ordered Fauci and Collins to meet with me with White House counsel, present. And I said to Fauci at that meeting, you say I'm lying. For 8 years, you've been saying I'm lying about this. Show me the study. And at that point, he made this show of going through, a lawyer's read well, like he was looking for a study. And he said, I don't have it here. It's back in Bethesda. And I'll send it to you. I never got it. So I sued him, me and Aaron Siri, and after stonewalling us for a year, their lawyers met us on the courthouse steps and said, yep, you're right, we never had any study. And they gave it to us in writing. You can go to the CHD website, my website, and you can see that letter from HHS. So they don't have to do, there's no downstream liability, there's no front-end safety testing. That saves them $250 million. And there's no marketing and advertising costs because the federal government is ordering them to ordering 78 million school kids to take that vaccine every year. What better product could you have? And so there was a gold rush to add all these new vaccines to the schedule that we don't need. Why would you give a hepatitis B vaccine to a child, a baby? The only way you get hepatitis B, you can get it from the mother, but every mother's tested. In the hospital, every mother who goes in the hospital is tested, so you know. You give it to those kids, okay. But the only way that you get it is from, sleeping with a prostitute, unprotected sex, or male promiscuity, or from sharing needles with somebody who's got it. Well, the little baby gets it on the first day of life. He's not going to do any of that stuff. So why do they do it? I'll tell you why. Because Fauci told Merck to make the vaccine. Fauci helped make it, develop it. Merck made it, and they said, we're going to sell it to prostitutes and to male homosexuals. Merck came back a year later and says, none of these guys want it. They got other things they want to spend their money on, and they're not people who are really concerned with health, by the way. So the CDC and FDA said, don't worry. They said, we put all this money, Merck said, we put all the money into infrastructure, and now nobody's buying it. And so they said, okay, we'll mandate it for children. That's why these kids have to get hepatitis B vaccines. The entire safety testing for Merck's hepatitis B vaccine, 4 days. Oh, it's criminal. And most of these vaccines are unnecessary. Many of them are for diseases that are not even casually contagious. It was a gold rush, because if you get onto that schedule, the recommended schedule, it's $1 billion a year for your company. And in many cases, NIH is sharing the royalties. So we got all of these new vaccines, 72 shots, 16 vaccines, and now even more because we're doing the HPV vaccine. And that year, 1989, we saw an explosion in chronic disease in American children. Any of you who are my age, I'm going to name some of the diseases that are most common. You think about it, whether if you're my age, I'm 69. I had 11 brothers and sisters, 70 cousins, and I never saw any of these diseases. I never knew a kid with a peanut allergy. And why do 5 of my kids have food allergies? Well, their asthma was around, but it was rare. My brother has asthma. His doctor said there'll never be a cure for these diseases because it's too rare, nobody ever studies it. Now 1 out of every 4 black children has asthma. The neurological diseases suddenly exploded in 1989. ADD, ADHD, sleep disorders, language delays, ASD, autism, Tourette syndrome, tics, narcolepsy. These are all things that I never heard of. Autism went from 1 in 10,000 in my generation, according to the CDC data, to 1 in every 34 kids today, 1 in every 22 boys. And some of these kids, in severe autism, I've never seen anybody my age with severe autism, severe, real, full-blown autism. That means stimming, head banging, toe walking, nonverbal, non-toilet trained. Where are these people? Why don't you see them in the malls? Because they didn't exist then. And they're not locked up anywhere because there's no place to put them. But 1 in 34 kids has it. About half of them look like that. These are kids that'll never hit a baseball. They'll never pay taxes. They'll never vote. They'll never write a poem. These are kids who many of them will never sit on a toilet unassisted. They'll never go out on a date. We did this to a generation of kids. Those in the neurological disorders, autoimmune diseases. I never knew anybody with juvenile diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, 170 autoimmune diseases that have now exploded. Congress said to EPA, tell us what year the autism epidemic began. And EPA is captured, but not by Pharma. So it actually did some science. And it said 1989, it's a red line. That's the year. Now, it could be so, though. Let me get into that in a minute. And then the last category is allergic diseases. There's food allergies, peanut allergies, anaphylaxis. I've never heard of eczema. Now you go into every classroom. And anaphylaxis. By the way, so many of my kids had food allergies that I helped found the Food Allergy Initiative. We raised, and a guy I was suing constantly, David Koch, was my partner starting this thing. So he had a kid the same age as mine with who's anaphylaxis. We brought $200 million. We brought all these doctors up and scientists. We created a lab. What I found out is these scientists, the way they study food allergies, is they give rats allergies. They induce some allergies in the rat. And then they study it. How do you induce an allergy in a rat? You give them the aluminum adjuvant from the hepatitis B vaccine along with the protein. So if you give him a peanut protein, he now has peanut allergies. If you give him a latex protein, he now has latex allergies. If you give him a dairy protein, he now has dairy allergies. That's how they give it to him. Well, and then not only is it the protein doesn't have to be in the syringe, and a lot of our vaccines have peanut oil excipients, so it's not. It's no mystery where the peanut allergies are coming from. But also, if there's something in the ambient in the environment at the time, like if there's a Timothy weed outbreak, that kid now is going to have a lifetime allergy to Timothy weed. That's why vaccinated children, this is 2 studies by Cowlings and Mawson, have 30 times the rate of allergic rhinitis as unvaccinated children. They're sick all the time.